welcome to the Wealthy Kids Investment Club VIP event. Today, we have a very special guest. Her name is Jamie Bosse, and she is a financial planner, author, and a mother of four. She's on a mission to help young families understand, manage, and improve their financial situation while raising money smart kids. Jamie has a passion for mentoring and financial literacy and is the author of Money Boss Mom, helping young parents be the boss of their financial future, investing for tweens, as well as Milton, the Money Savvy Pop Children book series. She has been a financial planner for 20 plus years and works at CGN Advisors. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited that you're here. We've met a few years back at one of the conferences. And I absolutely love your children book series. And I think that's something that I definitely want to touch on in today's episode because the members of our club are actually parents who are trying to raise money smart kids. So, and you're a mother of four, so we have a lot to unpack here. Can you maybe let's get started at the very beginning and tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you get to where you are right now? Did you always have this love of helping people with their money? And have you always been good with money?
Great question. So I actually fell into the career of financial planning completely by accident. So I was actually going to college to be an elementary education teacher. And while I was there, my sophomore year, my parents filed for bankruptcy. And so that just opened a bunch of questions for me, like, how did this happen? What does this mean? Are you going to jail? Like what happened here? And so then I started studying some of those topics for myself. And I ended up signing up for, Personal Finance 101 at college just for me, because I knew I clearly didn't have a good education around the topic of money and I needed to figure out more. So I took the one class, what thought it was really interesting and empowering, and decided to take another. And then after I ended up taking about three of these classes, I thought, well, what an amazing career path this could be to help people navigate money and avoid these situations like what my parents got into. Because there's just so much you don't learn about. You don't learn about money in school. You learn from trial and error, and maybe you pick up some things from your parents or other people that are around you. But it seems to be such a taboo topic that people struggle with, and it can really make an impact on your life if you don't have good command of it. So I've been a planner now for 20 years, 20 plus years, and I just find it a really rewarding career to be able to help people, get unstuck. A lot of people come in that are just like, I'm doing all these things, but I don't know if I'm doing the right things, and I feel like I'm, just stuck. And so it's really rewarding to be able to help people get from point A to point B and give them the peace of mind that they're doing the right things and they're on track.
Yeah, it's definitely a rewarding career. I mean, you're really helping people change their lives for the better. I think that's amazing. And, going back to your parents and the money mindset that you grew up with, obviously, I mean, your parents declared bankruptcy, which means that, okay, maybe they were not managing their money as well as, let's say, you're managing your money now that you have all this knowledge. But what was your money upbringing like? And what about that money mindset that you grew up with? What was that like?
Yeah, in my house, it seemed like money was almost a bad thing, if that makes any sense. So it was kind of like if there were people that had money, but we didn't, and we're good people, so they must be bad people, right? Or
Mm.
they must be greedy, or they're hogging it all. That was kind of the mindset. I actually have like the wealthier people tended to live on the hill in our town, and so that was like you associated the hill with wealth and maybe greed, and the normal people lived, down in the valley. so, so it was something I don't remember my parents actively talking about it very much. Just that, there was an extra. We heard things like, we can't afford that a lot. And it was really kind of a scarcity mindset that there's just not enough money. So why even think about it?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. We all have different money mindsets we grew up with. And what I find fascinating is what you just said. Like you did, it's not like they talked to you about it, it just permeated into your subconscious and what you were thinking. And I want to touch on that a little bit because it's parents who will be watching this recording. With your work with the clients and even your work as a mom, do you see that the subconscious money beliefs that shape who people become, or like their relationship with money and their money decisions? Have you seen that in your practice?
Definitely, yes. So I think especially when you have, two clients come in that have a different background with money, like maybe one had that money is bad scarcity mindset, and then one had a more healthy wealth building approach as they were growing up. And I think what really helps is to understand where you're coming from. Like it's not good or bad, however you were raised. It's just like having the knowledge that that might be untrue and that's just what you picked up from your parents. But now that you know differently, what are you going to do about that? Or how is that ingrained bias impacting how you make decisions and do things today? And can you flip the script and do it differently, now that you know about it? So a lot of my work with couples is kind of working through, what each of their past was with money, and then how do we come together now to build the life they want to build together.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what about when we think about our own children and making sure we don't pass that on to them? How did you make sure that you did not pass to your children what you kind of grew up with respect of money?
Yes, I have to really think about that every time we're somewhere because kids are watching you and they're learning things whether you're saying it or not. So when I am when we're shopping or when we're making decisions or when we're on vacation, I try to make it a part of the conversation. Like, we saved for this vacation and we planned for it, and this is something that we value spending money on. Or when we're at the store and I tell them, they say they want to buy something and I'm like, well, that's not in our spending plan today. Well, let's take a picture of it and maybe we'll make a plan to buy it later. So instead of just like saying, nope, we're not buying that, or just saying, nope, we can't afford that, we're saying we're choosing not to buy that today. If we want to make a plan to save up for it, let's do that. And then putting it kind of in their hands, like, is that something you want to spend your money on and save for? Because that's not something I'm planning on buying today.
Yeah. How do you talk to your kids about money when they are comparing themselves to others who have more, or maybe these other kids have something that your kids don't have? And
Mhm.
this is, yes, how do we talk to kids about it? But then also, how do we as adults deal with something like that?
Yeah, I think this is hard for everyone because wealth is invisible in a way, right? Like we can't see what your investment balance is or what your bank account balance is. But what we do see is what car do you drive? What vacations are you posting about on Instagram? What house do you live in? What neighborhood are you in? Are you paying for private school? Like we can see those things, but those things aren't necessarily a true indication of wealth. They're an indication that you've spent money on things, or maybe you have a high income and can do some of these things, but it doesn't mean that you're actually wealthy and building wealth. It just means that you've spent money on these higher ticket items. So I think it's trying to get around like just what we see, like this is how they have chosen to spend their money and that's what they value. Our values might be different, right? Like maybe we don't care about spending a lot of money on the nice car because we'd rather take nice vacations. Or, like trying to talk around those things whenever they bring things like that up. Because it is what we see, seems to be all that there is. And there's just so much more to the story.
Yeah, 100%. And what about those times when they come home and maybe they're like, so and so has these super expensive sneakers, but I want a pair and mine are not as great? Or how do you handle conversations like that?
Yeah. So in the case of, sneakers or something like that, I try to put the decision making on their end, right? So I say, okay, if that's something that you want to buy, we are willing to buy you the shoes that are on your feet right now. But if that's something that you want to spend your money on, my kids earn money and they have an allowance, and I can help them say, okay, let's look up how much these things cost and where we can buy them. And, how long will it take you to save up to buy this? And then what are you giving up by spending money on this instead of something else? So I try not to say it's a good or bad thing to spend the money. It's just like, okay, if this is something you value, let's talk about how we can make it happen. And then what are you willing to give up to be able to buy it?
Yeah, so I love that because you're bringing up the opportunity cost, you're giving them choices. You're not saying spending money is bad or spending money on this particular item is bad. You're just saying, hey, it's your choice, but here are some things that you have to consider and let's make a plan.
Yeah, because I think especially for kids, the decision making piece is a key thing that you want them to experience now. And you actually want them to make some mistakes, right? I think mistakes is how you learn, and you'd rather they make the mistake on the $10 item as opposed to making a $10,000 mistake, when they're 21.
And I love that. I totally agree. I think that, yes, now is the time to make those mistakes and embrace mistakes and learn from them. And I think from what I'm hearing that you're saying is that it's important to give them that sense of control too. Like they control their money, they control their decisions. You're just there to sort of guide them and provide some sort of support.
Yes. And it can be so frustrating to let them spend money in a way that you feel is silly or wasteful. But how I try to put that in perspective is okay, they've made their choice, and I want them to feel the consequences of that, right? Whether they're good or bad. So once they have made a purchase, I like to follow up with them like a week or so later and say, hey, are you still enjoying that thing that you bought? And then if they have forgotten all about what it is or lost it or broken it or whatever, then we talk about that and say, would you have done anything differently knowing what you know now? So it's not shame, it's not blame, it's not, I told you not to do that. It's just like, let's reflect on it. Would we have done that same thing again, knowing what we know now? And so there's the learning opportunity right there. And then if it's something that they love and they get a lot of use out of, or they wear it all the time, then celebrate that with them and say, you know what, you worked hard for your money. You made a plan and saved up for this, and you bought something that you value and you use. And that's what money is for. Money is to help us live the life we want. So good job.
I love that. We do absolutely the same thing in our family. We've been doing it since the kids were little. And sometimes parents worry that the kids will not know whether or not they've made a mistake. And they absolutely do when they spend money on something that wasn't worth the money. They know it and they mention it. And as you said, it has to be a conversation where you're not making them feel guilty about it. It's just a learning experience and a reflection, right?
Yeah. And because I think you want to be careful not to say that, spending is bad. Because it's not, we all need to spend money on things that we need to buy today and in the future. And, some things we buy we don't need, and that's okay. But, you want the message to be that, you have to weigh the decisions of what you're spending money on and making the best choice for you. So.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm actually kind of backtracking now because I probably should have mentioned this earlier. But tell us, how old are your kids? You have four.
I have four, yes. So I have a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and then twin 8-year-olds.
Twin 8-year-olds. Okay.
Yep. So we're kind of in the middle school tween age with the older two, and then kind of middle elementary with the others.
And so tell us a little bit about their money personalities. Like, what are they like? Because I do believe that money personality is a real thing. Like, even if kids grow up in the same household, they can have different money personalities. At least that's what I found with my two and with the parents who I've worked with over the years. Is that the case in your household too?
Yes, everybody is so different. My oldest is very considerate with money, like he wants to really think about it before he spends it. With him, we do a lot of, we look for things, but then we take a picture of it or a screenshot of it, and then we're like, let's just revisit that later. Maybe I'll spend the money later. And he just tends to just be really close to the vest with spending. My second one, just, if you take him to the store, he'll just like grab a bunch of stuff and put it in the cart. And then it's like, okay, well, what are you going to choose? Because you can't choose all these things. And then he's like, going through it like, oh, I don't know. And he just wants everything and wants it quickly. Um, so, so he's harder to manage money wise, but he also is super interested in investing. So he's been my one that's been really a lot more interested in, okay, tell me about this. Tell me about, the companies I can buy and what they do and how this works. So that's been interesting that he's a heavy spender and always wants to spend the money, but he also wants to make it grow, which is a great thing. And my younger two, there's a girl and a boy twin, and the boy twin just is completely oblivious. Like he doesn't really care about money. He doesn't really have anything he wants or needs. He's just like, whatever. And then she's very thoughtful about it and is like, how do I earn more money? Where do you earn money? Like she asks a lot of good questions. And so it's been really interesting to see how they're all, different, and approach money in different ways.
I love that. And so I want to go back to the twin boy because that one question that I often get from parents who have kids that do not care about money, are completely oblivious. There is just no motivation to learn about it or save it, even spend it. Um, how do we help kids who are oblivious about money care about money? Because money is part of our lives. It is important part of our lives, and we shouldn't put it on a pedestal, but we need to make sure that our kids know that they need to manage it properly so that they can be fine and safe later on.
Yeah, I think just trying to make day-to-day things real for them, right? So when he does want something, then I try to bring it back to the money conversation about, okay, we buy things that we value. So do we want to save up some of your money for this? And do you want to spend it now or you want to wait till you have more and you can buy the bigger version of it or whatever? So just trying to, when he does show some interest in wanting to buy something or, like if you were at church, are you going to give some of your money to the church this week or, talking about giving and what we value there. And so just trying to make it real whenever it comes up and just using everyday moments to talk about it, to kind of normalize the conversation and that's kind of solidify good habits and making sure it's not a taboo topic.
Yeah, and I love that. I think using everyday moments to talk about money is very important. And as you said, when you talked about your childhood, like nobody really told you anything about money as much, but you just picked up little clues. I find that I kind of grew up like that too. Many people do. Money is taboo in a lot of homes. And but I think using everyday moments and narrating what we're doing with our money and what our options are can definitely help kids manage money better or at least learn about money management.
Yeah. And then as long as you're still, giving the positive messages about money, talking about healthy habits, they're still absorbing it, even if they seem like they don't care. But
Yeah, I find that with my kids. My kids are a bit older than yours. I have 19-year-old and 17-year-old. And honestly, I remember when they were younger, with one of them in particular, I was a little bit really concerned because she has a spending habit, but she is so good with money now. And it really proves that, if we keep repeating the same thing over and over again and teaching them that it does pay off. But I would have to say that in the younger years, there was part of me that was wondering if I was just wasting my time.
yeah, but she probably learned it, by watching you and, making some of her own mistakes. And that's just
Yeah.
how you pick things up along the way.
Yeah. So speaking of kids, I actually have a question for you as a financial planner in your practice. Do you ever work? I know you work with a lot of young families.
Mhm.
Do you work with some, I guess, maybe older clients who are transferring the wealth to the younger generations? What kind of good things and bad things do you see with that? And what can we learn from what is going on right now? Because everybody talks about this biggest wealth transfer from
Mhm.
one generation to the next that's happening right now. So, what do you see, good and the bad, and what can we learn from that?
Yeah. So would say I do have, the bulk of my client base are kind of younger families in their 30s and 40s who are trying to kind of balance the competing priorities of life while saving for the future. But I do have a lot in that kind of retired age group that they are thinking about legacy planning and doing some gifting today and then planning for what happens after they die as well. And it's kind of a mixed bag. Like some people are very like, my kids can make their own money. I worked hard for this. I'm going to spend it or give it away to charity or whatever. And then there are some people who are really trying to consider, how do I give some of this money now, as opposed to waiting till I'm dead and I can't see them enjoy it, right? So a lot of times what we're doing with them is looking at, there's an annual gifting limit of how much you can give each year to someone without filing a gift tax return. And so we'll look at giving either cash, or maybe they have appreciated investments that they could gift shares to their kids, or family members, whoever they're trying to give to. And so a lot of times those are, you've really fun clients to work with to figure out, okay, we built this portfolio for you and you're living a great life. And, we know there's going to be enough and we know you're going to have extra. So, if giving is important to you, to the family now, let's figure out how to get it into their hands. I think sometimes there's a lot of control desired still, where they're like, oh, okay, I want to give it to them, but I don't want them to spend it on this, or this. And I think that is a mistake, because I think you should have open conversations with them. Hey, it's really important to me, to give you some money and help you out now. And I think you can tell them how you would like them to spend it or how you would like them to use it. Um, but you don't get to decide once you've given it away, right? So um, I think that's maybe one of the bad things, is that they keep trying to control it, beyond the gift. Um, but they're also not willing to kind of talk about it with them to see like what's going on in their lives and what are they thinking they need to spend the money on. So I always encourage open conversations between the generations, um, to not only talk about what the older generation's wealth transfer plans are, but what is the younger family members going through? Like what's coming up for them? How can you use this as a learning opportunity to talk about experiences you've been through when you were in that phase of life?
Right. And so for the, I guess, older generation, if somebody wanted to control, let's say, this money that they're giving, would they be able to put that in a trust, and then set certain conditions around that trust? Maybe because, let's say, somebody who's afraid that their children don't have financial skills to manage this money properly, would that be an option?
Yep, that's commonly something that people do, where they'll put money in the trust, and then once they're gone, each child inherits their share, but it has different rules on it. So they can say it can only be used for these few, like health, education, maintenance, or support, or it can only be used to start a business, buy a house, pay for college, those sort of things. And you can also put age limits on it. Like you can't access all of it until you're 40 years old, or you can get half of it at 32, but then you can't get the rest until a certain age. And those age limits sometimes help, with the teaching piece of it, right? So if they got like a third of their share when they were 30 years old and they blew it in, 2 months, then they might consider that more the next time they get a cash inflow from the trust at a different age, to say, okay, when I got my last one, it didn't go well, it didn't last long. Um, I'm gonna do things differently this time.
Very interesting. So, I want to kind of keep on that train of thought that we're on right now. So, with our own kids, okay, actually, first of all, let me just ask you this. So, do you have investment accounts for your children? If so, can you tell everybody like just what you set up, like what type of accounts? So, Jamie is in the US, she lives in Kansas City. For those of you who are Canadian audience, I can just translate later what that would be equivalent in terms of Canadian accounts.
Okay. Yes. So all my kids have a 529 plan, which is the education savings plan. And I love those because they are a cool tax efficient bucket where you put the money in, it grows tax free as long as it's used for education. And they're pretty flexible on what type of education. So it can be, not just your 4-year universities, but also, trade school, cosmetology school, those sort of things, and goes to books and supplies and things like that as well. And then if there's any left over, there's some newer rules where you can transfer that money to a Roth IRA for the kid in the future, depending on a bunch of rules and nuances. But I do love the tax piece of that bucket because when I put money in, I get a tax deduction now in the state of Kansas, and then that tax-free growth can be really powerful in the long run. So that's kind of the base. And then each of my kids do have a Trump account as well. None of them qualified for the free $1,000 seed money because they were too old for that. But 2 of them qualify for the Dell Foundation contribution. And with the 538 Trump accounts, I was kind of against them at first, just because I was like, well, there's just so many other ways to invest for kids that are more tax efficient, that just make more sense. But then I realized that there could be some opportunities here to, since you're putting the money in a pre-tax way, it kind of acts like a traditional IRA. It could be rolled to a Roth maybe in their early 20s when they're, not making much money, and that can open up some opportunities there. So I'm not putting much into those, but I did want to just kind of see how that evolves and see what planning opportunities arise with those. I also have just a brokerage account that right now I don't have in their own names. It's just kind of like an earmarked investment account for kids in general. So my thought with that was this is just kind of a bucket of money that I want to have growing for them that I can use for them for stuff in the future. Maybe it's buying cars for them. Maybe it's college related. Maybe it's wedding presents. Just something where I know I have some money growing and investing for them. And if I want to gift them some of these in the future, that will be ready.
And I have a question about the brokerage account. Is that the Atma account that you have, or is it just go ahead,
Nope.
sorry.
So the UTMA is where you put kind of, it's a custodial account, so you'll put the kid on it, and then they'll get full control over it at age 18, where I live. With this one, it's just a brokerage account in me and my husband's name, where we are just earmarking it for them. So we still own and control it, but we're just earmarking it for kid related stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. So for those of you who are Canadians, the 529 account that Jamie was talking about is our RESP account, so a registered education savings plan. We don't have Trump accounts, so that would not be applicable here. And the brokerage account would be essentially any brokerage account that you can open for yourself. It could be your TFSA, or it could be just a regular investment account. So basically that's something that you can also do for your kids. No, this is wonderful. And then, so you said that your 11-year-old is very interested in investing. What about the other kids? Like, do you invest with them? Do you talk about investing with them? How does that look like in your household?
Yeah, we do. So, and we do also have the Greenlight app. I don't know if you have that. But it's where you can kind of give their allowance through the app, and then they have a debit card where they can spend money, and then there's different buckets where they can save and invest money that goes in there. So we do use that as letting them kind of choose what to invest in for my older 2. And once they get paid, how much are they going to be able to spend on their debit card, or how much are they saving, and how much are they investing for the future? So far, the 11-year-old is the one with the main interest. My 13-year-old, he is doing investing through there too, but he's just like, just pick whatever, it's fine, go ahead. So I think he knows it's important and he knows it's a good thing, but he just doesn't take the time to look at it or think about it.
Yeah. How would you, what kind of advice would you give to parents who are just starting to learn about investing, who feel intimidated by investment jargon and don't really know where to start for themselves, not to even mention for their kids?
Yeah, I think this is really hard because we're not taught how to invest and how to grow wealth. It's not part of school. It's not part of things that we learn in normal day-to-day life, right? So I think having the mindset that it's okay to be a beginner, it's okay to be learning as you go, because we all are. I think a lot of people shy away from investing because they feel like they need to have a bunch of money before they invest, which is actually the opposite. You don't have to be wealthy to invest, but investing is how you get wealthy, right? So even if you're just doing $25 a month into an index fund, that'll matter in the long run, right? Or if you're just investing in your retirement account at work and you're doing $200 a paycheck, that matters. All those small things will add up in the long run. And investing, it takes a long time to build wealth anyway. We're not typically just making one, big gamble and then we're wealthy. We're consistently investing over decades, and then at the end of that time frame, there's millions of dollars, right? So it's having a long-term mindset and just knowing that small amounts matter. And as a parent, I know it can be really intimidating if you feel like, well, I haven't done a good job with money. So who am I to teach my kid about money? Right. And I saw a study that said that like 68% of parents feel this way to some degree, where they're like, oh, I'm not really qualified to talk to my kid about money. But as we talked about before, it doesn't have to be about alpha and beta and like the time value of money. You can just use everyday moments to give money lessons, right? Like when you're at the store and you're choosing one item over another, talk about that and say, hey, I'm making this decision right now, and this is what I'm thinking about and why I'm choosing this thing instead of this thing. Or when you're not spending money on something because you're saving for something else, like say that out loud so they can hear your thought process of like, okay, yes, I want this thing right here, but I'm not going to buy it because we're planning our vacation and I want to be able to buy some souvenirs there. Uh, just kind of articulating, making the invisible visible to your kids, I think is a really great place to start.
Yeah, and I really like that. I think it's so important to articulate some of those money decisions and the way we're thinking, because a lot of times we even like we know what the right answer is, but our kids don't know, and unless we talk about it, they won't know. And so I just, yeah, I think that's really lovely, what you just
Mhm.
mentioned. I think it's really important. In terms of investing, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So, are you a big fan of index funds? Do you invest or ETFs? Do you invest in those, or do you prefer to pick your own individual stocks for your portfolio, or like what's how do you approach investing?
Yeah, I think investing should be boring. So, so I'm not trying to pick the like sexy new thing or get into something that's illiquid and hard to navigate. I think especially if you're just getting started, index funds, ETFs, even mutual funds are just an easy place to start because it's an already diversified mix of assets that you're just buying a piece of. Um, and I think when you do go down the individual stock route, it's a little harder to be diversified, especially if you don't have a big pot of money to start with. And then you're placing a lot of bets on just one company doing well instead of you know 500 companies doing well, or some of the 500 doing well.
Yeah.
So I think especially when you're getting started, just picking something simple. Um, yeah, index funds, ETFs are a great place to start, and know that it doesn't have to be a big amount. You can start small and grow from there.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with that. And that's what we teach in the Wealthy Kids Investment Club. We teach about ETFs and index funds. I also don't have a very complex portfolio. It's super simple. It's been like that for years. And I have been able to grow my money successfully. The reason why I believe in that is because most of us are busy with our existing lives. Like we don't have time to sit in front of the computer and read all these financial reports and monitor stocks. And you are a financial planner, I'm a CPA, and we could easily do that, but we have a life to live. We have kids to take care of. So I find that if I can simplify something like investing with the ETFs and index funds, for me personally, that's the right choice. Although I do have some individual stocks where I was just like trying things out and they worked out, but I feel that takes a lot more effort for me personally than just sticking with ETFs and index funds.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think you don't have to make it super complicated to make it worthwhile.
I agree. Yeah. So tell us a little bit because you have a book for tweens about investing. So tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah, so investing for tweens, it's for kind of the 10 to 14 age range, which I felt like was kind of an ignored age range, right? Like I feel like there's some resources for little kids, and even I made those resources for little kids. And then I think there's stuff for the teen audience and young adult audience, but the tweens seem to be this kind of in between where they're not little kids, so you can't talk to them like they're little kids. But they're not understanding adult concepts yet and adult situations. So it's a whole different thing. So writing this book was actually really fun for me because I could use my kids as like guinea pigs to say, okay, I'm explaining this. Tell me what you think of it. And do you understand what I'm saying when I say it this way? Um, so it's been really fun. And I think that kids in that tween age group, they're more interested in money and they're more interested in what money can do for them, right? So I think when you're working with little kids, you're talking about the basics of like what money is, how you earn it, what we use it for. But now it's so much cooler because it's like, what can money do for me? And like, how can I build wealth with this? And what does this mean for me now and also in the future? And I think if you're well versed in kind of investment language, you mentioned that a lot of times parents are just learning about investing for themselves, and so they don't feel like comfortable talking to kids about it. Reading the book together can be a great way to like learn and talk about those topics together. And then if you think about like if you understood investing as a tween, even if you didn't invest yet, but you started investing right away when you were a young adult, just think about the difference that makes. Because the biggest piece of building wealth oftentimes is time, just like time in the market, time to let it grow. And so if you're starting at 17 or 20, that's such a head start over starting when you're 35. So, and in my work over the years, I've seen clients come in and almost everyone says something along the lines of like, I wish I started sooner, or I wish I started that Roth IRA with my first job, or I wish I knew more about this back then. So if you can empower your kids with knowledge when they're just, 10, 11, 12 years old, just think about what they can accomplish over the years.
Yeah, I feel that everybody who learns about investing and starts investing, every single person I know says, I wish I started earlier. And
Yeah.
so I know for me, I was a little bit of a money nerd. Like I was reading some investing books when I was younger, but I don't think I really, even though I was really good at math, I don't think I understood the power of compound interest and what it could do for me. I wish that somebody had told me, oh, you can invest $25 a week and let that sit there and let it compound and invest it in ETFs and index funds. Pick the ones that, align with your risk and your goals. Like it's actually quite simple. I wish somebody had explained that to me. And because I did invest, but then I took the money out and like I was all over the place. But it's really simple. And if we can, the more we can simplify it, the better it is. And you're right, like starting early, giving our kids that opportunity to start early and accumulate this wealth is such a gift, and it can set them apart from so many other kids in their generation, but just giving them that head start so that they have a lot of opportunities and choices later on in life. Can you just hold up your book a little bit on the screen so we can see it? That's what it looks like. And can everybody find it? We'll definitely post a link to it under this video on YouTube as well as in our on our platform. But people can find it on Amazon, right?
Yep, yep. It's on Amazon or you can get it through Penguin Random House.
Okay, perfect. And tell us, we're almost kind of coming to the time, but I just want to quickly touch on your kids' books. Milton is the main
Uh-huh.
character, right? So can you tell us a little bit about that and maybe hold up a book if you have it with you?
Yes. So I have 5 books in the Milton the Money Savvy Pup series. And these are just kind of kindergarten through second grade level books. And Milton is the main character. He's a super cute corgi, and he was actually our family dog. He was a real guy. And he's just learning different basics of money. So in one of the books, he's learning that money is earned by working and that sometimes you have to wait and save to get what you want. In this book, he's learning the concept of you don't just spend your money every time you get some. You can give some to charity, you can save some, and then you can spend the rest. And then I have a couple more on different topics with taxes, gratitude, a good night story, and then an activity book where you can do kind of puzzles and games related to money instead of just reading the story. So, so I think this can be really fun for parents to read with kids, just sort of open up the conversation about money with the littles.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And this book, these series of books can also be found on Amazon, correct?
Yep, they're on Amazon, and there's actually a Milton the Money Savvy Pup website that you can order books from me, and I'll autograph them if I send them to you from there. And there's downloadable coloring sheets and worksheets and games that you can do with your kids as well.
Amazing. That's wonderful. Thank you so much,